having a panel, but she's trying to create the record that's going to be necessary for the battle to restore the Voting Rights Act, right? That's what she's trying to do, to create a record to restore the Voting Rights Act. So I have she asked me to moderate, and as you all know, I'm a preacher, but I'm going to try to moderate. And I have some very specific questions for the panelists. As you see here, this is being taped and live streamed because the goal of this, in other words, is to give her the kind of ammunition that she needs as the lawyers and others are fighting. So in a moment, I'm going to ask each panelist, if they would, for the record, to introduce themselves, their name, where they're from, what they're currently doing. And then after that, I'm gonna open with the opening piece, and I'm gonna have a question, but I really want them to introduce themselves first. I do want people to know that I have no intention of disrespecting anyone. I'll try to walk in a place of love. I apologize last night. I was not able to be here due to planes being late and trying to get here. Only part we want to do in this moment, that's all we want to do, is what she had asked for us to do. And because they had some trouble, we wanted to get this panel in. So I'm trying to honor what she asked us to do, and I hope that all of us do that as well. All we have to do in this, we need everybody on the field for this and where we are in this country now and in the days to come. As co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival, we now have 41 coordinating committees in 41 states and over 120 partners, and we built from the ground up. The Poor People's Campaign has been built by people in all of these states. We went across this country talking to impacted people, not talking for them. Because the goal, if you're going to build a movement, impacted people must build, a stage must be built for them to speak for themselves. So it is with poor people, not for them. Poor people, clergy, moral leaders, advocates, and others. Last year, we had over 5,000 people engage in nonviolent civil disobedience in 41 states and District of Columbia over a period of 6 weeks, simultaneously at the same time. Historians have said it was the largest wave of its type in recent history. We had over 50,000 people engaged, 38 million people hit by Twitter, and over 1 million people on video to launch the campaign. And 25,000 people showed up on June 25th of last year to say they are a part now of the founding members of this part of the campaign. Right now, we're having hearings across the country. In a few weeks, we will have 28 bus tours traveling to the poorest areas in the country. Fire will be in Selma. The Alabama bus tour will be coming through here because one of our greatest battles in this moment is changing the narrative, because the word poverty isn't even used in the political sphere. So you can't even be in the transformation of policy if you're not in the narrative. And then on June of this year, we're having a PMAC. If the conservatives got CPAC, we said we needed PMAC, the Poor People's Moral Action Congress, and over 2,000 people will join from across this country for a Congress. We'll be demanding a hearing on Capitol Hill on 5 interlocking issues. Dr. King said 3, but we're not limited to that, because we said systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation and health care, and the war economy and militarism, and then the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. Those are the 5 interlocking injustices that only a moral fusion and intersectional movement can address, that is long-term. After that, we're also going to have a major C-SPAN piece where we're asking all people that will be running for president, including Trump, he's going to get even an invitation, to come. But they must come and listen first to impacted people. And then they will get a question from impacted people. And they must answer somebody. So it's no longer about them answering a commentator who says, what do you think about health care? We're going to have somebody say, I'm dying in Georgia. Yes. Because you didn't expand health care. See, that's a different kind of question when it comes from somebody impacted. And then we have one more big announcement I'm going to wait until June to announce. But this is serious business. It is about not just, for instance, with the governor in Virginia. We were there a few weeks ago. I don't know how many of you all have heard of Union Hill. Union Hill is a formerly slave-free community. Carter G. Woodson came from Union Hill. Dominion, a company, Dominion Energy, is now trying to put a major pipeline system in Union Hill that will spew out cancer-causing agents in Union Hill. They don't need it. They don't need the pipeline. They're not even going to make money from the pipeline. They're going to make money from building it. And what we said to the governor, we really don't even want you to go do an apology tour. Because if you're apologizing for simply 30-year-old pictures, you still don't understand what racism is. What you need, your first thing you need to do, if you're serious about saying, I'm not what those pictures said, is not to talk about reconciliation when there's been no conciliation. How you want to talk about reconciliation? There's been no conciliation. What you need to do is go to Union Hill and reverse your position, because you have stood on the side of the corporation against this black community. That's right. And then, as Jesus said to Zacchaeus, if you really want forgiveness, go back and restore what you have taken from the people. And then we can have that. So this is serious business. Let me start by just asking each, was that mic working?
There's no.
Oh, it's for the camera.
But
okay,
everyone,
so can y'all all use your preacher's voice? Because I know you got one somewhere down there.
Yeah, everyone's speaking.
And just give your name and who you represent, if you would.
That mic is for the live stream, so everybody needs to speak into it.
Okay, all right. Yes, sir. Starting with you.
All right, I'm Pastor Cuban Jonathan Glasgow, the founder of the Ordinary People Society, the Father Child Project, co-founding creator of the formerly incarcerated Convicted People's Movement, and Alpha Matter.
All right.
I'm very glad to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Joe Drayton, president of the National Bar Association. We represent black lawyers across the country and globe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Fuller, and I am from Los Angeles. I'm the chair of the Women of Concerned Black Men. We mentor young African American males and females in South Los Angeles.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcia Johnson Blanco, and because of Barber Arnwine, I'm the co-director of the Voting Rights Project and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law.
That's right.
My name is Richard Franklin. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, down the road, and I'm president of Birmingham American Federation of Teachers.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Buenos días. Mi nombre es Sarai Portillo with Alabama Coalition for Immigrant Justice. I'm the executive director.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isaías Guerrero, and I'm the Southern Regional Organizer on Immigration for a coalition of 44 immigrant rights organizations, originally from Colombia, undocumented and unafraid.
Yes, sir.
Greetings, my name is Brother Jumoke Fetayo. I serve as the Southeast Regional Representative of INCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. I also serve as the Atlanta Male Co-Chair of INCOBRA.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Tamika Mallory, and when I'm not being the co-president of the Women's March, I work for Reverend Barber, Roland Martin, and Barber Arnwine.
No, they can't get away with it. That's right. Give up his name. All right. Now, I want to set a context. Let me say also, when we talk about systemic racism, because everybody now wants to talk about racism in terms of cultural racism, like words, pictures, and statements, because they really don't want to deal with systemic racism, institutional racism. And part of our work is to change that conversation. So real quickly, when we talk about in the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, we say systemic racism, the first penetration point is voter suppression. Then we talk about the treatment of our immigrant brothers and sisters, particularly our Latinos. Then we talk about mass incarceration. Then we talk about resegregation of public schools. Then we talk about the continued mistreatment of our First Nation people, who were the original, that started with them. Now, these are what we call penetration points, because what we want to say to folk is don't come to us all excited about some cultural racism that you just want to make the news and not deal with the continuing systemic racism, because you can actually never offend somebody culturally. You can never say the N-word. You can never have a picture and still be committed to systemic racism. In fact, in these days and time, and I might get some pushback for this, you can be black and be at least an enabler of racism. Right? Because because on all the issues I just named, you choose to be on the wrong side of them and the wrong side of history, right? So we want to be clear. Now, I want to raise this question from this narrative. I'm going to ask, and you all can choose which one of you may want to take a shot at it. Before Donald Trump, since 2010, we've had 26 states and all of the southern states, former slave state, to pass multiple types of voter suppression. Yes. Might write that down. 26. Because I'm trying to help us understand. If you think just moving Trump is going to fix everything, you 20, and this was since 2010. Somebody say 2010. Because there are two issues I think we have to deal with on this vote matter. That's suppression of the vote and surrender of the vote. Yes. The surrender part is on us. The suppression part is what's happening to us. Write this number down, 2076. 2076. Does anybody know what that number is other than the year 2076? That number is the number of days that the United States Congress has refused to fix the Voting Rights Act. Now understand this. June 25th, 2013, Shelby decision came down, gutting the Voting Rights Act. On June 26th, the Congress could have fixed it. For 2,076 days, the Congress has refused to fix the Voting Rights Act. We called Strom Thurmond a racist, and he only blocked the Civil Rights Act of 1957 for 1 day. Did y'all get it? But this Congress, Boehner, Ryan, McConnell, have entered into interposition and nullification, as Dr. King would say, for 2,076 days. At the same time that the South and the change in population is exploding. From 2000 to 2010, the non-Hispanic white population grew at 4%. The so-called minority population grew by 34%. In 2000, the South was 34.2% people of color, and that number by 2010 jumped to 40%. 40%. Which means that people of color alone in the South now represent 40% of the population. Every state has passed voter restriction. And be careful not to just say voter ID, because that's not just what they're doing. They have curtailed early voting, made it harder to register to vote, introduced voter IDs, introduced racialized gerrymandering. And interestingly enough, when it comes to those who get elected through voter suppression and racialized gerrymandering, when they get in office, they block living wages, they block health care, they block housing, which mostly hurts in numbers white folk, in terms of raw numbers. It hurts a larger percentage of black folk. See, for instance, there are 140 million poor people in this nation, not that 39 million that they often tell us. There's 140 million low wealth and poor folk in America. Now, 60% of black folk are poor. That's 26 million people. But 33% of white people are poor. That's 66 million. So in terms of percentage of race, 66% of our people are poor and low wealth. But in terms of raw numbers, there's 40 million more poor whites than there are poor black. And the irony of it all is that those who get elected through racialized voter suppression, once they get elected, they use their power to hurt mostly in raw number white people. That's right. Now, if that's the case, and if it's the case right here in in Alabama. Reverend Jackson and Fire talked about Selma, but also right here in Alabama, I just pulled this just a minute ago, is that we should know that right here in Alabama, 45% of the people in Alabama are poor and low income. Notice I didn't say black, I said 45% of the people. That's 2.1 million residents. 53% of all the children are poor. That's 500,000 plus. 47% of all the women, Tamika, in terms of the women, are 1.1 million women in Alabama. 60% of people of color, 976,000. 37% of white people, but that's 1.1 million. At the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, Dr. King said, every time there is the demographic possibility of poor whites and poor blacks forming a coalition of voters that will transform the society, the white racist aristocracy sows division because of their fear of another Reconstruction where black and white people come together and address what's going on. Now, if this is the case, this is where we are, Democrats don't fight for the South, amen, and Republicans push voter suppression. Here's the question, and I'd like to ask a couple of you to raise your hand to take this. What must we as the movement do if we can't depend on the parties to do it when it comes to maximizing our vote? Is that a good question? Can two of y'all you want to take a shot? I need some hands. Okay, 1, 2, got to have a sister. All right, 3. Y'all take a shot. Take about a good minute and a half, 2 now, because we got to run some more questions and hit this. All right.
So first and foremost, what we did, I'd like to give a hand to Ryan Haygood. Ryan Haygood over there, when I first started, stand up, Ryan. When I first started, well, the teaching was talking about earlier, about when she was talking about disenfranchisement, and when she first started it, it wasn't romantic and sexy. Wouldn't nobody help us and all that. Back in 2001, 2, and 3, I started going inside jails and all. We started taking it up on ourselves, from jail, from prison, to start learning how to vote ourselves. And the reason I applaud Ryan Haygood, because he took the time to get in the dirt with us, come to jail and prison with us. In 2008, we ended up, after that 6-year fight, we ended up winning the voting rights where they could vote out of prison in the state of Alabama because of me and Ryan Haygood's lawsuit. You got a lot of people that say they was there. Me and Ryan ain't see them. So what we have to do is take it up on ourselves, like we did, that we all count, that we need to be in there. So that's why we formulated Our Vote Matters. And the reason that people are not voting now is because I blame it on the babysitter. That's the internet. We give our children these phones and these electronic games, and that's their new babysitter. And what they're doing is programming them. So when they look up to Jesse Jackson or me or Ryan or my brother or somebody else or my son, when they look at us as their heroes and their idols and somebody to look up to, they'll put something bad about us. And it takes away their role model, takes away their hero, and then they don't want to vote. So what we have to do to close it in is we got to start reprogramming our children. How? By communicating with them. Jesse and them didn't have Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, none of that, but they had communication amongst each other, and I think we done got away from that.
That is a powerful point. The next question, and before you go, listen at this, you all. In Alabama, over 266 felons, including 144,000 black voters, were disenfranchised. Just hear these numbers. This is why your point is exactly right. Who's the next person? Say who you are for the camera.
This is Marcia Johnson-Blanco with the Lawyers Committee. While we're waiting for Congress to act, we need to pay attention to how our vote is being taken away. Voter purges. We need to verify our voter registration because we have not only elected officials, but also private organizations like the Public Interest Law Foundation that's taking away our names off the voter rolls. So we need, even if you register to vote, call, check, make sure that you're still on the rolls. So when you show up to vote, you can. They are consolidating and closing polling places. We can find out about this before it happens by attending elections meetings and learning about when they're planning to do this and speak out against it. When you speak out against it, it helps lawyers like us to be able to fight and say they did this against the will of the people. We need to pay attention to how they're counting our ballots, because sometimes we get a chance to vote, but if we vote absentee, they're rejecting it because they're now signature experts and they claim that you're not who you say you are when you sign the absentee ballot form. So you need to pay attention to how they're counting our ballots. You show up to vote, they say you're not on the rolls, here's a provisional ballot. But will that ballot count? Were you in the right precinct? Are you following up and making sure that they count our ballots? And lastly, there are two very important bills in the Congress right now, the For the People Act, to push back against the barriers to the vote, and H.R. 1, and the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which was introduced by Representative Sewell this past Tuesday to restore the full rights under the Voting Rights Act. You need to call your members of Congress and make sure that they're voting for this bill, both in the House and in the Senate. We need to put the Voting Rights Act back at the forefront of when we talk about the need to fix voting in our democracy.
Well, wait a minute, Marcia. You need to tell people about election protection and how to connect.
Okay, and how do you verify your voter registration? How do you let us know about the problems you're facing when you go to vote? 866-Our-Vote is a nationwide hotline that you can call and let us know if you need information about your voter registration, but also if you encounter a problem voting. On Election Day in 2018, we brought 4 lawsuits on Election Day to make sure that people can vote. So get your information, and we're here to fight for you on Election Day and also after Election Day.
So I'm hearing first, we got to communicate, we got to make sure, we got to go into places that people are being disfranchised, especially when the laws change. My sister is saying we've got to know the protections, we got to pay attention, but we also have to stay in the courts. Yes. So one of the things that come out of this hearing, our lawyers have to stay in the courts. This week we won a case using the state constitution in North Carolina. That's they didn't even think we could win in the state. It was a states' rights battle, and we beat them on voting rights. That's right. All of these southern constitutions have some stuff in there that people put in there in 1868 that haven't been litigated. Our forefathers and mothers were very far ahead. So the next, how should we be responding? And I'm going to go to Reverend. He asked, how should we be responding if these are the facts on the ground that I read earlier? What should we as the movement should be doing? Who was that last person? And then I'm going to ask another question. Was there one more person?
Go.
Yes, ma'am.
Go.
No, right here.
Richard Franklin, being with the union and being an African-American male and being from Alabama, it brings tears to my eyes. First, I think we have to tell the truth. The Republicans and Democrats have never had our back. So we can start right here in this city that we're in. What if I told you that poverty in Selma is worse today than it was when they crossed the bridge? What if I told you that while we're sleeping and we celebrate, we're not organized? What I mean by being organized, in this room today, and this is what brings tears to my eye, I've watched Brother Roland Martin on TV. I've met him one time. I've met Jesse Jackson. I've watched him on TV. I've watched Rose Sanders and Hank Sanders put this program on in Selma every year. I've watched Brother Charles Steele, and I've watched Reverend Barber start a movement. The reason I say it brings tears to my eyes, before we start anything, we have to acknowledge who our leaders are. These are our leaders, and we have to put them in the room more often. And we may disagree on certain things, But if we go back to what we're celebrating, if this fight was going on with Dr. King and before Dr. King and before that movement, and we have it going on today, think about that for a second. As a union, people separate us. I'm a human being. I go to the store just like anybody else. But the union movement, what people don't know, when they crossed that bridge, Albert Shanker was giving Dr. Martin Luther King a check. When they were putting the kids in jail in Birmingham, they were giving them a check. Right. What I'm saying is we have to be organized. Yes. When it comes to the younger voters, we have to meet them where they're at. The first thing we got is teach them the importance of voting. This is going through social media today, so we're making a big change. But we also have to let our young people know who the individuals that I name right now, they are our leaders in our community. Some of us like some and some don't. I have to tell the truth. But they are our leaders. So first we have to tell the truth. We all suffering if you live in the inner city, in a rural part of anywhere in this country. But the very city that we sit in right now, just Google it. Don't take my word. The poverty rate and what's going on in Selma right now. But I tell you, go back to why we got to organize. It is my belief, studying the history being from Alabama, that in cities such as Selma and Birmingham, certain parts, what they did was in Selma, the state of Alabama decided not to send any money to Selma. And if you talk to the people since they crossed that bridge, what money have the state given Selma? And we have to talk about that going on throughout this country. I just wanted to say that we have to organize first.
That's a powerful point, organizing. Our lawyers staying focused, coming together, being able not to have to agree on everything. We don't make perfection the enemy of great. Right? All right, and communication. And I got 3 more questions. Reverend had he wanted to say this point.
My point is, that was the time you pulled against Alabama football team playing USC.
It's not.
That was the time you pulled against Alabama playing USC. But now Alabama got 3 black quarterbacks lined up and USC has none. Things have changed. I'm trying to say that if you put the question of summary, Brother Barber, Republicans push us off and Democrats ignore us. You say that was the difference. There's a difference, y'all. Yep. Democrats is Maxine Waters. It is Marsha Fudge. It is 55 African Americans in the Congress. It is 38 Latinos and 20 Asians, 100 plus women. We have transformed that situation in the last 6 years, really. So it's important that we don't, well, the difference between, one time Nixon had a threat that went like this. Nixon, I'm a racist, Humphrey's a racist, what's the difference? You voting for racist. We bought that. The difference between Humphrey and Nixon was miles and miles apart. Don't confuse, I'm not going to vote for Hillary or Trump because Trump asked the right question and what's it going to do for us. Many blacks voted for him or stayed home. Be clear, this time around, Trump is a fascist to the right. Not good for anybody, including himself. And so my second point would be simply this. Things are changing so fast. I was asked for an outside, and I'll let you go, Barber, about desegregation. You know, we got about 10 blacks in the Congress now with majority white districts. That's right. We're changing stuff. Don't confuse yourself. We got black in the Senate from New Jersey and from what was the Senate? California is Attorney General. There's Scott from South Carolina, but the other senator, Kamala. My point is, don't leave here with a broken spirit because you can't figure out everybody. We are winning this one. We are winning. We are winning. Don't let these, in Trump time, we beat Trump at the height of Trump's power.
Come on, Doc.
We won. We took the House back from at the height of his power. Get all the cameras, all the lights, all of them. We beat him. Last point is, quit talking about poor white people. Folks who vote for Trump are rich people. That's right. Average vote was $64,000. He gave the rich people the tax bill and gave poor people the left leg. Trump's base support is Wall Street in Silicon Valley. Trump's base is rich people. Poor people are being used by him. They're the locked-in minority. The tax base, the tax cut did not go to poor white people or poor anybody. Thank you, Mr.
No, Reverend is exactly right, and that's why one of the things we got to do is we have to make sure that we're building. That's what I was trying to get at: building the coalitions. Yes. And not writing people off. My point, for instance, about Republicans, they come south, right? I'm got to get the pound. They come south hard. They put money in the South. We're going to have to help Democrats understand, not only can we find a blue wall that goes around the South is primed to rise again in the right way. Right. That's what I'm talking about. And the numbers tell us this, right? Even with the voter suppression. I'm going to go to those numbers in a minute. I want to get ahead on that question. But that's the point. So it always has taken a movement to push parties. Parties never get them by themselves. Even good parties, even good people. They have to be pushed. That's what Selma was about, right? Lyndon Baines Johnson said, I don't want to do it. Selma, the Montgomery, they made him do it. People that got elected not to do something ended up doing what they were elected not to do. And that's the point I wanted to raise with that question. Let me raise this question in light of we said 2,076 days since the passing since Shelby, and they blocked fixing the Voter Rights Act, and now we have the Democrats, at least in the House. But what should be I want somebody to take this question, what should we be doing, particularly tomorrow, since Republican and Democrats will come to Selma, Congresspeople, and say they love civil rights? What is the one is there anything we ought to be asking and demanding tomorrow? Is there anything we ought to act up a little bit about tomorrow? Is there anything we ought to be pushing for tomorrow? Since it's been 2,076 days since the Congress could fix the Voting Rights Act and stop these legislators from passing these bills, and we have to win 4 and 5 years later in the courts. Got a couple of people to take on that. My brother right here and Sister Mallory, who I work for.
Joe Drayton, President of the National Bar Association. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my wife and daughter and Tanya Clayhouse, who chairs our civil rights section in the National Bar Association. And being here, feeling the energy, it's fantastic. But I do want to say, to answer the question specifically, is do you respect the right to vote is the question. Because if they respect the right to vote, we'd have the H.R. 4 bill done if they respected the right to vote. What kind of legacy do they want to leave, right? They've been on the watch when we don't have the guts to provide the constitutional life to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So that's the question that we should raise and pose and say, it's a failure of your leadership. When we look back on history, you have made this history and you have put this mark of negativity on us.
I want you to drill because you have on to something. So what do we do tomorrow when folk will come here tomorrow? Congressperson. Tim Scott came here 2 years ago. I asked him, he said, no. I said, well, then why are you in Selma? I mean, really, how do you claim to love the folk that marched, but then you won't fix what they marched for? So I want you to drill. What should we do tomorrow, and since they're going to be here, and they're going to sit in the church, and they're here now. Right. Let me let him. I want the panel. I got you. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say this. I think what we can do, and I think it will resonate, is to ask, do you respect the right to vote? Is this the legacy you intend to leave? How can we help you get the ball over the finish line? That's it, in my humble opinion. There may be other things, but if we do those things, they'll resonate. And you're the conscience. The lawyers are the tool. And the one thing I want to say is we're going to, at the National Bar Association, we're going to double down. We're going to educate our lawyers because we need educating. We're going to shame our lawyers a little bit because we need a little shame, right? Because we get sidetracked. But then we're going to send them into the community, and we're going to have them further educate the citizens. And we're going to ask the citizens to educate the lawyers and bring them back to the table because my mom, my dad, my aunt can motivate me to do more. And so that's one thing we're going to do at the National Bar Association.
Sister Mallory.
All right,
We only have 2 more questions. I'm going to try to honor the time.
Thank you so much, Reverend Barber. And I just have to keep saying that it just feels so good to be in this space right now. It really does. You know, I think I may come at it from a different perspective. I think we're just a little bit too nice. And I also think that the direction is warped because we're talking about today what we ask tomorrow rather than us having this kind of conversation as we're leading into these moments so that we know when people come, if it should even be allowed, first of all, to walk with us. There should be a commitment. They should not just be allowed to just assume the position. We ought to have some prerequisites for even coming down to Selma that, you know, and perhaps that means we all need to stay up overnight and go to Roland's room and organize what that looks like. And I mean, I'm serious, so that when people get here, we don't allow them to have a ceremony because what they're doing is taking pictures and they go back and put it on social media. And they have people believe that they support our interests and they do not. And I think that one point that has been made here is so powerful in terms of us getting in a room and having a real conversation even with our own leadership, because we are also playing into and allowing this to happen by having certain leaders walk with, embrace some of these folks in order for them to get the photos for their social media as well. And meanwhile, the rest of our people are being left behind. And I think we have got to start. That's why they don't really invite me to things, and that's okay. It's all right. But we've got to start calling even our own people out and saying to our own folks, even you won't be invited to come back if we continue to take this posture that we're bending over and allowing people to have their way with us, because that is exactly what I see happening. It's what I see happening. And I think that.
Let her finish, and I might raise a question.
I think that, you know, just to kind of go back to the other question that was asked about what we should be doing, you know, I think about when we were registering voters during or not just registering, but also trying to get out the vote during the midterm elections, and the Women's March had a bus, and we took some white women that had never done this type of work with us to the hood all over this country and got them to see and work with and talk to our folks that when they open up the door to their apartment, it's scary what you see, you know, and that's where we wanted them to go, into the belly, so that they understand exactly what our people are dealing with. We were not bumping into folks in those areas that were down there with the resources to get our people out. So where the money is going, where the resources are going for voter registration and voter turnout and all of that, those people were not there to continue on your street, Kenny. They were not there in those communities. Now, there's sometimes when I go into certain communities to register folks, when people invite me to come and do a speech and I get to put my cute clothes on and show up, everybody is knocking into each other to get to those doors. And those are basically people who have had 3 or 4 knocks by candidates, by organizations, but in the belly, in the hood, in the real hood where our people are really, really struggling. People are not showing up there. They're not really doing the work. So when we ask the question, what should we be doing? I think that has to be the first focus. They have to be at the top of the list. And then we sort of work our way down from there. It's ensuring that we center the most marginalized people in our communities, because even our movement as black folks who are organizers is too elite for some of our own people. It's too elite. And we have the tendency to want to challenge white women and other folks about how they don't include us. The feminist movement, we as black women have been very clear that we felt abused and excluded from the feminist movement of the past. But even when we look at what our legacy organizations are doing, where are the links? Where are the deltas? Where are the AKAs? Where are all of these different groups, of which I am a link, and I support very much the organizations that I'm a part of, but we are not walking the street and with our boots on into the communities where our people are really hurting. So I think that the question, we're asking the question too late and in the wrong direction.
Too late. Listen, too late and in the wrong direction. So if you know something is coming up, what she's saying, and you know people are going to come and use it, that means it's set. They're going to come every year and use it. It's like somebody's going to go down to your grandmother's grave and desecrate it, and you know in advance. You know in advance. You know, I was kind of, that's why it was strange to me when I got put out of the church here on the Bloody Sunday for challenging a Secretary of State in Alabama who basically said that his push for photo ID was in line with those who marched from, and I was told, you know, we got to let everybody speak. No, we don't. I mean, well, yes, we do have to let them speak, but we can challenge the lie, and especially if it's right in our own house. And so that is, Jamaica, that is a powerful point. Also, I want to raise now this question out of that, because one of the things, even with the Poor People's Campaign, when we started organizing, we said we were going in the country to get among poor people and bring in the room with advocates and others to build from the bottom up. There were organizations that criticized us, said, why you didn't call us? And we said, but you should be happy that we're calling on the people. It's not about top down, it's about bottom up. Nothing really has ever changed from DC down, it's changed from Selma up, right? From Birmingham up. Here's the next question I want to raise. And somebody be ready to grab this. I want to give you some facts. In the southern states, the former slave states, there are 57 million poor people. 57 million poor people. 52 million poor people. 24 million of them are white. 24 million of the 52 million are white. There are 13 million uninsured, and almost every southern state refused Medicaid expansion. You hear what I said? There are 13 million. In Alabama alone, trying to get this stuff on the record like you asked me, Barber. She said, get it on the record. All right. In Alabama alone, 420,000 people were uninsured. In Alabama alone, 36.4% of your census tract is unable to afford water. I was here last week in Loudoun County, where there's a community in Loudoun County where 3 times a week the city sends the septic tank pumping trucks into a community to pump sewage out because it's overflowing back into people's yards in a black community today, not yesterday. All right. In Alabama, there are 3,800 people who are homeless. In Alabama, you have to work 82 hours at the current minimum wage to possibly afford a 2-bedroom apartment. That's why we don't need a staggered raising of the minimum wage. We don't need a minimum wage for the South and one for the rest of the country. Because even at 15, you're $5 under what it ought to be if it kept pace with inflation since 1968. Right? Now, 948,000 workers make under $15 an hour. 51% of Alabama's workforce makes under $15 an hour. That's the 7th highest position in the country. Now, 105 veterans make less than $35,000 a year. 27% of Alabama's veterans. Now, you put that in check. I want you to hold it. You got 52 million poor folk in the former 13 slave states. 24 million of them are white. 24 million of them are white. All right. If you look at the eligible voters in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, and Texas, the total number of voters was 56.8 million. The total number of registered voters is 44.7 million. The number of people that voted was only 44% of the registered voters. So 56% of folk already registered. You don't have to do nothing. They're already registered. Did not vote. If you look at these states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, Delaware, Maryland, Missouri, and North Carolina, 1.598 million black voters that were already registered did not vote in 2018. Let me go down a little bit further. Stacey Abrams didn't lose, but was cheated by 60,000 votes. 206,000 already registered African Americans didn't vote. Didn't vote. Now, you heard Tamika say something we have here. One of the things parties do is they determine turnout by where resources go.
That's right.
And what I was saying is neither party, I know but neither party, well, the Republicans put resources in the South.
Yes.
Why? Because if they can hold the 13 former Confederate states, they control 176 electoral votes without, off the bat, which means they only need 94 electoral votes from the other 37 states to control the presidency. They can get 176 of what they need to 270 from just 13 of the former Confederate states. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? If they can just control 13, they get 176 right here. They get 33% of the United States House of Representatives. They get 26 members in the United States Senate and only need 25 more to have a basic majority. The battleground is here. My question is, in light of the facts of poverty, and in light of the facts of voter suppression, in light of the fact that voter suppression and those who suppress the vote hurt particularly those in poverty, what should we be doing regarding the registered voters? And what should we be demanding in terms of resources for the registered voter? Because if you add to that Latino vote, right, and a progressive white vote in the South, that's a whole new majority, right? What should we be demanding, and how should we build coalitions in light of these facts? So I got some people that haven't spoken. Who hadn't spoken? I got, bam, all right? My sister in the middle. My brother, do you want to tackle this one? I've got another one after this. All right, you're going to wait till the next. All right, tackle it, my sister. We got two sisters. All right, let's go.
Do you want to start first?
Hello, everyone. Holly Fuller. I think as far as millennials are concerned, I'm really... Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. As far as a lot of millennials that I've been speaking to are concerned, they want to know, particularly African-American millennials, what is the Black agenda and how are candidates speaking to them? In particular, of course, we know it's important to vote, and we're very thankful for all of the civil rights leaders who have made that way for us to vote, but they would like to know, if I do vote Democrat, what is the Democratic Party going to do for me? How are they going to help me in terms of student loan debt? A lot of African Americans are in debt, about 40,000 to up to 100,000 or more in student loan debt. A lot of millennials are asking about reparations. They want to know questions and like, how can we take part in that? what are the candidates going to do to address that? A lot of them want to know about education, obviously. Most schools, public schools, white public schools receive about $23 billion more than a lot of the majority African American schools. So they want that to be addressed as well. So once candidates, I believe, start talking about that, in addition to providing resources for more Black-owned businesses and circulating the Black-owned dollar within our community, then they'll probably get more attention, and millennials will be more motivated to go to the polls and to vote.
Sister, you just said something powerful. I want y'all to hear. What she just did was twisted this thing. She said, maybe it's not that people are just lazy and don't want to vote. It's that they don't hear themselves in the agenda. If there are 52 million poor people in the South and the candidates aren't talking about what they're going to do about poverty, then there may not be a motivation. I mean, we can say all we want to, well, we ought to vote. I understand that. But everybody, the middle class hear themselves called. The wealthy hear themselves called, right? But if people are uninsured, and that's what Stacey showed us. She actually showed her own part. You can run on what you believe. You don't have to be Republican light. You can actually get out there, be Black, and talk about guaranteeing a living wage. You can talk about guaranteeing health care. You can talk about justice for the Latino community. You can challenge somebody when they say, you're a socialist, and you can say, well, if I'm a socialist, then Social Security is a socialism. And you can do that. And sister, that's a powerful point. We must have a movement, and that's what we're trying to do in the Poor People's Campaign. I'll talk to you about that later. That's just setting an agenda and saying, if you want these folk, everybody else says, put me in the platform. Right? That's what everybody else said. Even Trump, when he won, what did he do? He said, you got to change something in Russia in the platform. Platform, 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 platform. Right. And what you are saying is, if these are the facts, then somebody must speak to them, and they can't merely tell us, well, if you just help the middle class, it'll be all right. You can't do that. And you can't tell us you just went to Selma. Now, we're not dumb when it comes down to voting. We know the difference between voting for a faction and whatnot. But if we're really talking about not just saving parties, but saving this country, we gotta demand that. Who's my sister? My sister. Go ahead. All right.
Hi, buenos días. Again, me, Sarai Portillo with the Alabama Coalition for Immigrant Justice. Thank you. I know I have a really smooth voice. So first of all, let me say that how privileged I feel right now. Right now, I have sharing the room with Fela Rose over here. I'm sharing the room with Reverend Barber, with Jesse Jackson. I mean, what else can I be asking for, really? I'm super, super happy, super excited about to be here because of the civil rights movement. I'm here, right? I'm speaking out, and that's why I'm here. So I just want to mention that I'm from Mexico City. My story about immigrating, it took like 15 years now. So I waited 5 years to become a resident and then 10 years to become a citizen. So you can imagine how hard it is for our community to really follow the right way, right, to come to the United States, or just to become a resident or to become a citizen. So that's why it is really important for us as a community to visualize ourselves in a state of Alabama that many of the issues are pretty much black and white. But we understand that. We understand that we are coming by the numbers, and we are visualizing ourselves little by little, right? Making contributions, working, being just here, right? So that's the way that we work. We work about challenges, and we work a lot on leadership development and how to bring those challenges and bring those conversations together, right? As a Black community, as a Latino community. And one of those issues that connect us is detention centers, right? Jails, right? Incarceration issues, right? Connect us with the Black community. So our work as Latinos, we need to build alliances with the African American community, with the faith community, and that's pretty much why we're here too. If you remember HB 56 in late 2011, right? Was because of the force of the African American community that really was uniting with the Latino community that we were able to knock down a little bit of the harsh pieces of the law. We still have that law in effect, right? Just I want to remind everybody that, right? And at the same time, we are suffering the effects of white supremacy. For us, we know white supremacy as the colonization in Latin America, right? So that's the connection that we need to do among our communities. How white supremacy has done in this country and how we were affected by our colonizers, right? Because this country was colonized by maybe England or wherever. We were colonized by Spanish people, right? So we need to make those connections to, in order for us to really unite and fight together, right? Because we need to also understand what this systemic racism is doing among ourselves, right? And how our community also sometimes clash to each other because of the system was designed for that, right? So, okay, so going to a strategy, civic engagement is one of our main strategies, right? So we do voter registration. What we know is that we have mixed status families. That means that we can be citizens, we can be residents, or we have no status in our home, but we can mobilize. We can use our voice to really mobilize, educate voters, and register new voters too. Latinos are becoming also really noticeable. Young folks, right, are going to be eligible to vote, and we are going after pretty much our Latino community or young folks, not just Latinos, right? African American, white folks, poor white folks, right? We also mobilizing the community. So, anyways.
Say that again. White folks, brown folks.
Everybody. And we're trying to do canvas teams, like bilingual canvas teams. So if you're interested, we haven't really been that successful about it, but it's because we have to have bilingual teams at the same time. But if you are interested and you want to become one of those super volunteers with us, if you have the power of being bilingual, also just please let us know, and we can, walk in those neighborhoods, because people, don't go if you don't see your representation on the streets. So we here, please reach out, and more than glad to be here. Thank you.
So let me make a point. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. So I just heard a Latino sister say I have to use white supremacy too. Right, and that's a critical point. If we're going to build and understand this, the coalition, we cannot see voting rights as just like the black issue and nobody else speaks to it. They have to understand the intersectionality between the same people that are against voting rights are against immigration reform. If you watch their vote, same people against immigration reform are against health care for all. Same people against health care for all are against public education. If you check the votes, the same people against health care reform are against the LGBTQ community. So one of the things I like to say is they are cynical enough to be together. We ought to be smart enough to come together. You see what I'm trying to say? We got to be real, real careful. Now, I want to get to this question, and Meek, I'm going to come down, because I want to put a couple of things on the record historically. I want to raise one more question that I promised we would do. Then I want to do a closing piece. And then each one of you can have a 1-minute closeout. Speak to that camera as to why, the work that Barber is doing and the work the lawyers are doing, we have to support it. Now, the first thing is, real question. When was the first government shutdown in America? I asked that rhetorically because I want to say when it was. It will help us instruct us. 1877. Was an election, it was only been 3 of them, when a person who lost the popular vote was given the presidency. 1877, 2000, and 2016. That's the only time in history, 3 times. And all 3 of them were bad. Rutherford B. Hayes, Bush, Jr., whatever, and Trump. Now, 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes was given that if he would pull the troops and the protection, and as Tamika said, the resources out of the South to undermine the ability of black and white poor people getting together, because it was black and white poor voters that made the Reconstruction work, changed this country. 1879, a black man from the South named Blanche Bruce, was elected head of the United States Senate. And it revealed the continuing power of the black-white coalition vote. The Southerners of that day, that wanted to go backwards, decided on the appropriation bills that they would attempt to put voter restrictions on the appropriation bill, call them riders, R-I-D-E-R. The president wouldn't agree to the riders, and others wouldn't agree to the riders, and so the first government shutdown was over voting. Hear me now. Was over voting. Was over the changing demographics. Don't you for 1 minute think this current shutdown was just about a wall. It is about the fear of a black, brown, white coalition because of the changing demographics. And it was an attempt to show the power, right, of white supremacy. And we got to understand this history to know what's going on right now. Now, having said that, this is the question real quick. In light of all we've been talking about, the millions of the poor, and by the way, let me ask this question. Everybody can participate. Do you think if a group of Congress people had been blocking a bill that had been fixing a bill that addressed anti-Semitism, that they would not be being called right now anti-Semitic? If they were blocking a bill that would address anti-Semitism, so why is it that they can block a bill fixing voting rights and we not call them racist? That's do you think, is that racist? If you blocking, I mean, you don't have a picture nowhere in blackface, and you've never said the N-word, and you'll take a picture with Barber, but you blocking. But you blocking voter rights. Isn't that racism? We are going to have to start using the term and call it what it is. Now, here's my last question, and I bet you everybody might want to get into it. We lost Georgia, voter suppression, Florida, voter suppression, even Mississippi, Mike Epps, voter suppression. But he also showed what happened. I don't know if you all know, Mike Epps won 4 counties that Trump had won. But he really didn't get any help. I guess I have to tell it, Roland. He really didn't get any help from the party. Can I talk about? Not really. Not the kind that should have been there. So here's the question. When, and I applaud them, when governments, Mike Pence, governor, and others, North Carolina HB1, attack the LGBT community, Q community, corporations speak up. I just want to ask this question. What should we be demanding on corporations in states that are continually passing voter suppression law? Let me see. Anybody want to jump in there and grab that one? Huh? I'm just asking. Everybody else want to ask that? Okay. All right. We got 1, 2, and Roland. I don't know. Okay. All right. So, I got 2 that didn't speak. You can come up to the 4th one. I got to get my last.
Okay. Sweet. Thank you. All right. So again, my name is Isaías. Also an honor to be here. I came to the movement by being undocumented, by seeing my father get arrested and almost deported, and seeing people in Indianapolis being able to come together and organize a protest and a campaign around it. So that's how I came into this in 2005. So it's amazing to be here. 2010, we accompanied friends that walked from Miami to DC, pushing for the DREAM Act, and then seeing that even if we were able to get our stories out in the media, that wasn't enough because we didn't get the DREAM Act that we wanted at that time. And so what we learned is, connected to how do we build power locally, is, for example, ALEC, right? ALEC is American Legislative Executive Council. They're responsible for pushing the most anti-poor, anti-immigrant, LGBT workers legislation all across, and we saw a wave of that in 2010, 2011, affecting around 15 states that pushed anti-immigrant legislations all across the U.S. So how do we do that? First of all, it's our pocket, right? Where do we put our money? We cannot keep giving corporations this money. We cannot keep putting our money in their banks. That's why credit unions, basically, how do we invest locally? But second of all, I think it's also, how do we give the voice to those directly affected? Let me give you an example. Undocumented youth in Knoxville, Tennessee, came out and door knocked over 2,000 doors with their friends and their allies, and were able to get one of the worst anti-immigrant state legislatures out of the state legislature in Tennessee. This happened also in Arkansas, where now undocumented youth and their families and allies were able to go and door knock all across Northwest Arkansas, and now have an ally in the state legislature that is pushing for pro-immigrant policies. So I think it's focusing at the state level, where we're able to actually get our voices out, where the difference of votes are 2,000 to 5,000 votes, and really being able to create pro-immigrant, pro-black policies, and both advocating for each other, like Texas Organizing Project did in Houston, where they elected 17 black judges that understand what it means to be able to advocate for black and brown people, and that are really going to be able to fight for us, and that we're going to be able to hold accountable.
And I want to push you a little bit. I want to go get to my question. And folk may not want to answer it, but I want to get to it. Because we knock doors, and I get that. And I'm going to keep saying black, brown, and poor white, because I'm telling you, if we don't start talking like that and understand, and because we're leaving a whole block. I've been in Eastern Kentucky with the Hatfields and the McCoys. I've been in Harlan County, Kentucky, that was 89% white, and we're organizing up there now. I've been in a county where it was 99% white, 89% Republican. They now have a branch of the NAACP and are more radical than some other folk in North Carolina. My point is, Dr. King said, it is this, everything that's being done is against coalition. It is not against just one group of people. It is against the ability of those people to build coalitions. You win by coalition. You can raise hell by yourself, but you win by coalition. I wish am I right? You win. Don't have no mythology that we did all this by ourselves, right? Now, but my point is, and it's hard doing coalition to make it. It's hard, but you can find a remnant. There's always a remnant. But I still want to push my question. Yes. Every time, and rightfully so. You know, I was consecrated bishop by a same-gender loving bishop, Bishop Flunders, so I'm real clear. But every time the LGBTQ community is attacked, corporations join them, right? State laws, whatnot. I'm asking the question, what should be our demand on corporations in states that continually pass racist voter suppression laws? What should be the demand on those corporations, right? That's what I want to push on. You want to try another shot at it? And then go to my man, and we got to go.
Reverend Barber, before we do that, Sister Fire, we raised $827. I need everybody to go in their pocket and pull out another $2. Let's go to 1,000.
Well, the 1,200 has been done. If you want, it's been done. Now, if y'all want to add another one, go ahead.
All right, then.
Yeah.
Because,
no, I told Reverend if they put in what they put in fire, and we got the other 1,200.
we got 20.
So you got 2,000. Yeah. But y'all keep giving, because it always.
Yes.
All right.
You can cash out $2. You would like to cash out $2?
Can we finish? I want to honor, because I was talking about this a minute ago. If y'all hold up, we'll get the money before folk leave. I declare we'll be on fire. Come on, my brother.
All right, so
as
we're able to organize electorally, I believe, one, corporations should not be allowed to be able to push for bills in their interests, like ALEC does in state legislatures. So that's one, that should be illegal. And second would be, we should just tax them to be able to provide what is needed in terms of the basic needs of our people. So, like, how can we make sure that corporations will be taxed so that that investment and the taxes that they're not paying will go into our communities? And second would be coalition building around budgets. We just had $5 billion being put together, cutting services for after-school programs to go into the wall and to further interior enforcement.
Okay.
So.
I got your point. That's a push. My brother, tell me who you are. If you want to try that question, try it.
Yes, again, my name is Brother Jumoke Fetayo, representing Cobra. You know,
What's wrong?
Hold the mic up so the people in the stream can hear you.
closer.
People are live.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So there's a part of me in this setting that feels a little uncomfortable. And it's because of my background, but there's another part of me that still is affirmed by being in this group. I say that because, for example, my father was in the civil rights movement, still is an activist today. Earlier today, Jesse Jackson was here. Before Jesse Jackson ran for office, he set up a think tank. My father ran that think tank. My father's name is Holbert James.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you know, other links I have, when Fire Rose came out of law school, the first job she got in the movement was working with my father. So I have the civil rights background. When I graduated from college, I started working with SCLC, and you know, and also worked with the the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. But then there's another part of me that stands on the Cultural Nationalist and Black Nationalist Foundation. Right. And so a lot of times when we have these conversations, it doesn't necessarily resonate with me. That's why I hesitated to jump in terms of voting rights. Because to me, ultimately, everyone has to make their own decision. But I think ultimately we have to look at what's called self-determination. And perhaps, you know, they say Martin Luther King asked the question, maybe I'm trying to integrate my people into a burning house.
That's right.
And so we still think that question is relevant today. And that perhaps what we need to consider is those who are voting rights. We have something in the Black Nationalist movement that's called plebiscite. A plebiscite, meaning that we as a people determine if we want to stay a part of this United States or create our own nation or go back to Africa or all three of the above. And so it's on that I stand and sit here at this platform again and feel my sister Nkechi's like, did you go there, Brother Jumoke? She also comes from that foundation as well, you know, and I appreciate her as one of my elders in this movement for reparations and in Cobra. So in terms of, I'm trying to answer your question specifically, and again, I want to thank Reverend Jesse Jackson for speaking reparations into this, space, and other people that have raised it. You know, Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and them, that question of them being asked reparations didn't happen recently. Roland Martin asked presidential candidates way back on the question of reparations. Isn't that right, brother? That's right. So in terms of those corporations, to me, the obvious answer is reparations. Reparations. Even you, Reverend Barber, you know, you mentioned the reconciliation piece. You know, in the Christian tradition, as I understand, and again, that's not my background, but I understand there's something called repentance, reparations, and then reconciliation. That's right. All right? That's right. And people want to skip over the reparations part. They want to deal with the repentance. Sometimes they want to deal with the apology and I'm sorry, right?
That ain't repentance. That's right. That's right.
Right, but they don't want to deal with the reparations part that gets to the reconciliation part. And so this reparations question is very serious. And we are moving this reparations piece. And so we invite you to get more involved and to study it and to get on board with this reparations movement. This is something that must happen in this country. It's the only thing that's going to make sense for this country to continue to perpetuate itself. If that doesn't happen, I don't know what the outcome of this country is going to be. One of the things I'll just say in closing, and I assert this, and I invite anyone to come up and challenge me after this presentation is over. that reparations holds the best framework for addressing any problem, any problem, and any issue in the African American community comprehensively, holistically, and this is for you, Reverend Barber, systematically. Systematically.
Well, you know, as a nation, we really do believe in reparations. We just call it bailout. I mean, we do. We said, this country literally said, even if you're a bank and you did some crazy stuff and you stole from people, you are too big to fail, right? And what we're going to do, they didn't call it reparation, but that's what it was, right? We're gonna give back, we're going to restore, bring you back, because you're too big to fail. And the larger question about all of this, if businesses and banks are too big to fail, surely human beings are too made in the image of God to be destroyed and to have violent policies delivered on them year in and year out. So, and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna push this. Roland's gonna push it on this. What, you know, we people are doing this, Roland. They're coming in. We see it. They're passing these laws, and Georgia just had. You know, should we expect anything? Should we be demanding anything from these corporations?
So what you?
So what you're dealing with still is a function of whiteness. So what's happened now is we still view that if you're discriminating against African Americans, it has to be a hood or a cross. So now, so let's take North Carolina. North Carolina passes a bill that, first of all, was not solely about transgender bathrooms.
Right.
The same bill actually prevented cities from actually, city of Charlotte, from addressing the issue of a $15 minimum wage. Right. So that's often overlooked in that particular bill. But understand what happened. The NBA pulled the All-Star game from Charlotte, from North Carolina, because of the bill. But the All-Star game, I was there 2 weeks ago, that was in Charlotte. The same legislature passed an onerous voter suppression bill. But you did not have the same reaction to the bill. So what also has to happen is, and we have to deal with this, we also have to call on white LGBT folks to say, if we were standing with you on a bathroom bill, then you have to reciprocate and stand with us on issues that we consider important. When I went to North Carolina, when they tried to basically do away with a bunch of the HBCUs, I literally said to HRC, where are y'all on this issue? Because you were actually black legislators to lead on that. And see, this is where we have to be willing to call on other folks to say, if I stood with you, will you stand with me? And we have to be willing to actually say that voter suppression to black folks is the same as a transgender bathroom bill. Look, the Supreme Court already said there was a laser-like focus targeting black voters in surgical in North Carolina. It was there. They said it. So we have to be willing to say that that issue for us rises to the same level as other folks who say that transgender bathroom bill is wrong. Corporations respond to public pressure. And unfortunately, we are allowing corporations off the hook because we're not saying that this bill is so important to us that if you don't say something, then we are going to also pull our dollars from supporting your company as well. But we have to be willing to, one, be mobilized and organized to do that, because you can't have 3 people or 5 people go to a corporation and meet, and then you lay down the threat, and then when you turn around, like you have some black folks with Gucci, still walk into the store supporting them.
That's right. So my brothers and sisters, on this question, all we're saying is we have to call it. My brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community, one of the things they claim is this bill is a threat on my humanity. You know, voter suppression is also a sin. It's a theological issue. Let me tell you why, and I'm going to close this. Because the only people we give the right to vote, or we allow to vote in this country supposedly, are born 18 years old and naturalized in this country. We don't give the right to vote to pets, parakeets, and puppies. Only people. And in Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, people are created in the image of God, the image of the divine. So if you suppress my right to vote, then what you are literally doing is saying, I'm not human. You are suppressing the imago Dei, the image of God in me. And so that's why I think, Barbara, one of the things we've got to start doing, I'm put this on the record, is we have to stop saying voter suppression and start saying racist voter suppression. We got to add racism to it every time we talk about it. Just like we would say homophobic, or just like, we got to say this is racist voter suppression. This is not just voter suppression. This is racist voter suppression. The lawyers can check me. I play one on Thursday, so this is Saturday. But in the law, it's called disparate impact, which means it doesn't matter what's in your heart when it comes to racism. That's not how you prove racism in the court. You don't ask somebody what's in their heart. It's what's in the heart of your policy, right? And so we're going to have to call it. We're against racist voter suppression, and then connect racist voter suppression to systemic poverty and ecological death and all these, and militarism, right? And those things, and connect them up so that what happens is we are naming it, we are calling it, because we've got to transform the conversation about what racism is so that we make some of this stuff toxic. See, voter suppression, no, it's racist voter suppression. It's against the Constitution. It's constitutionally inconsistent. It's and morally indefensible, and it's economically insane. That's what it is. It's racist voter suppression. The last thing I wanted to mention today as we go into this, I always like to leave a little history note, as Reverend said, so that we have some hope in the room. In 1850, around the 1850s, a Supreme Court justice was forced onto the Supreme Court that shouldn't be there. There's no reason he should have been on the court. But a president pushed him, a bad president, pushed him on the court, got him there, got him through the committee. Everybody knew he shouldn't be on the court. His name was Justice Taney. Inside of a couple of years, he becomes Chief Justice. He presides over the Dred Scott decision. Should have never been on the court. Kavanaugh, shouldn't have never been on the court. Should have never been on the court. Right? Right? Gets on the court, becomes Chief Justice. He's a staunch slave man, all of that racist. And he presides. And they come out with a decision that a black man has no rights that a white man should ever have to honor. 2 months later, after that decision, May 1857, Frederick Douglass is asked to comment. What do you say, Frederick? They just said, that nothing applies to you. Your humanity means nothing. Everybody was saying, because of this president and this Supreme Court justice, it was over. The abolition movement was over. The movement was gone. Nothing they could do. Frederick Douglass is asked to speak about it, and he says these words, and we need to hear them. He says, sure, the court has said this, the Supreme Court, against the black man's cry for justice, but you cannot, thank God, close against God the ear of a sympathizing world, nor shut up the court of heaven. All that is merciful and just on earth and heaven will despise the edict of Taney. Now, this decision is monstrous, and it is evil. Now, but then Frederick says this: if it were at all likely that the people of these free states would tamely submit to this demonical judgment. You see how the language he used? We got to get back using some of this language. God, we got to stop being so nice, right? He says, if at all the people of these free states would tamely submit to this demonical judgment, I might feel gloomy and sad over it. And possibly if it might be necessary for my people to look for a home in some other country. This is Frederick Douglass, 1857. But as the case stands, we have nothing to fear. Talk, Frederick. He said, in one point of view, we, the abolitionists and colored people, that's coalition, should meet this decision, unlooked for and monstrous as it appears, in a cheerful spirit. What are you talking about, Frederick? Cheerful? Listen, he says, as I close, this very attempt to blot out forever the hopes of an enslaved people may just be the necessary link in the chain of events preparatory to the downfall and complete overthrow of the whole system. Y'all didn't hear what I said. He said, the whole history of the anti-slavery movement is studied with proof that all measures devised and executed with a view to allay and diminish the anti-slavery agitation has only served to increase, intensify, and embolden that agitation. I want to just suggest at the end of this that all that's going on, Trump and his lies about voting and all in these states and the voter suppression, maybe this season we're in might be the last link in the necessary chain of events, Lord have mercy, to lead to the kind of coalition and resistance in this moment for the overthrow of the full system of racism. Because the truth of the matter is, every time there has been an attempt to stop justice, there's always been a people that instead of stopping them, it emboldened them. It emboldened them. It emboldened them and increased their agitation. I suggest today we ought to be emboldened. And I suggest today we ought to be agitated. And I suggest today we ought to come together. Lawyers, sue like hell in the court. Those of us that can't go in the court, march and protest like hell in the street. Push our legislators and our congressmen. For this might be the moment that was necessary to wake us up again. God bless your heart.
So the backwards march will be tomorrow. You heard Rose Sanders tell you, those of you that want to are going to be in the late hour. We're going to be doing the backwards march. We're going to meet up. We told you at 1:30, 2 o'clock, be there at the bridge. Please be there at the bridge. Those of you that want to participate. You will get your vest, you will get your banner. We'll do the backwards march, and then we'll lay down. You will get instructions there. Please be there then. They will be breaking out Brown Chapel, and you will be coming with us. Karen right there, you can see Karen. See Rodriguez right there. Please sign up. We need your commitment. You don't need to just raise your hand because you feel good and then walk out the door and tomorrow you want to see the best picture. We need your action.
Okay. All right. Hold on, everybody. This is not your typical panel where you come, people speak, you get inspired. One of the results of this panel is that we are creating an action plan. So everything that the panelists have been saying, I've been noting, taking notes on. We already have a committee that has been working on the action plan, and we have a skeleton of it. We want you to do this. Write down hashtag lift our vote. 2020. 2020. Hashtag lift our vote 2020. We're going to post the action plan there. The action plan is very comprehensive, and I'm going to overlay a lot of what the panelists have brought today in their presentations. And we're going to publish that for you. And if we can get it done tonight, because we already have done one version, we will have it out for tomorrow. Okay, hold on before we get to announcements. I know that Tanya Clay House, who is, you know what I love in this world? Tanya Clay House is a lawyer. She worked at the Lawyers Committee. And she is so powerful in voting rights that a coalition of foundations have called upon her to guide them and how they fund this movement. So Tanya Clay House got some words to say about funding. Go on, girl.
I appreciate it, and I'll be brief.
Silent, everybody. Silence.
If you want the live stream people to hear you, need the mic.
Right. Okay, get him the mic. Get her the mic. Here she goes. Come on, Tanya.
That's fine. I'll be brief. I just wanted to acknowledge the presence of everyone in this room and also let everyone know that many of us do hear you. So those of us who have been in the field and been working are also advocating on other levels. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm working with foundations and funders to try to figure out how we can support more efforts in Alabama. That's exactly why I'm here today. So I wanted to make sure that you just knew who I was. For those of you, particularly those up here on the panel, I want to talk to you. I will be back with my colleague and prior panel as well. I just want to make sure I get your information because the State Infrastructure Fund is looking to do more support, particularly in the formerly covered jurisdictions, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And so please get in contact with me. But I just wanted to let you know that we hear you, I know what needs to be done, and thank you to everybody for all the work that continues to go on throughout this country. So thank you.
All right. You see, when we're serious, we bring resources to the table. We're not just bringing talk here. We're serious about this. Also, next year, FIRE has asked me to help take a leadership role in putting together the 55th anniversary of Selma. I need people who know how to work, who want to work, to join me in putting together the best, amazing program that we can, that will not only commemorate these moments, not only continue the moments, but take our movement to a whole different level. Because it cannot be business as usual. Everything has to be shaken up. Everything has to change. We are at a dynamic moment of activism, and we got to lead it. The other thing I just wanted to say is mark this on your calendar, August the 3rd. August the 3rd, we're going to have a National Voting Rights Conference. And we are planning it right now. August the 3rd, National Voting Rights Conference. We are currently looking at having it in Selma. And we're going to follow it up in 2020 with a national voting rights conference in Washington, D.C. Please make those notations. Right now, Fire Rose had to leave. Fire Rose's sister just died. She's an amazing woman, because she sat here with us for an hour knowing that. And I want you to understand why it is so important that we stand today. Not in the breach, but we stand in the moment to move it forward. That we are not only emboldened, but we know the work we got to do. So understand why it's so important that we support her with our best. So she has asked that we show a video that she really has her heart in, and that we show it today for all of you to benefit from it. Now, to the panel. You've been amazing. Can you give your 1 minute right now? And for everybody in the audience, we have promised to allow you to ask questions. And I know there are questions. So what we're going to do is do a quick round of questions. And our panelist is going to finish their 1 minute. So quickly, anybody with a question, not a speech, I'm sorry, can't do it today. But if you have a question for this panel, if you need an urgently to please stand up, and I will call on you. Yes, my sister.
Yes, I am Queen Mother Dr. Deloise Blakely. I'm the community mayor of Harlem and the ambassador of goodwill to Africa at the United Nations. What I will ask the panel to do throughout your deliberation, Queen Mother Audrey Moore, who carried reparations for over 80 years.
That's right.
She lived to be almost 100. So I say to you, in the question, raise up Queen Mother Moore when you do that, the mother of civilization for reparations.
All right, any other? Yes, right here.
All right. Jay Myhan, Real Talk with Jay. Social media plays a big role in influencing voters, and it will play an even bigger role in 2020. There are a lot of Facebook groups out there promoting not voting or voting against your own self-interest. How do we overcome that as a people and turn some of those folks and people who don't vote, how do we get them active in the voting process without there being conflict, but with there being a relationship and joining together of understanding where we're going as a people?
Right, and I hope people understand that when we're talking about social media, we're talking about those over 50,000 plus fake accounts that pretended that they were black, and when we traced them back, they went to Russia. Had hundreds of thousands of African Americans following them. So this is not our folks just talking trash to each other. It's people talking trash to us, and then we talking to each other. So I want us to think about this. And brother, thank you for that question. Yes, right here. Your question.
I want to know, do you think our solution lie with the liberation of Africa, and how do our voting help us liberate Africa? And do you think socialism is a better economic system than capitalism that will speak to the needs of the masses of the poor people in the world? Or do you think we need revolution?
All right. All right. Who else? Any other pressing, burning questions? Not comments, not speeches. Any others? Okay. Enough hearing no others. I'm going to ask the panel for your 1 minute, and we're going to show the film.
One more question.
What about this? Right here.
Excuse me. I want to know, yes, we have to collate the vote, but after the vote, you can't go home. Then you have to hold accountable those that you put in office. And I want to ask the question.
question of how do you maintain after all the effort you put in, because then you get tired. How do you maintain and keep pushing forward rather than just stop and say the job is done?
That's right. And that's the point, that voting is not just about elections. Beyond elections. Yes, I understand there's somebody else I missed. Is that right? Okay. So we got everybody. All right. So I'm going to ask this panel to start with your 1 minute. I'm going to ask the prior panel to also, and I'm so grateful to you from the prior panel who have stayed from the beginning, to also join in. 1 minute.
All right. So yeah, I just want to recognize some of my elders that are here standing in the tradition. Baba Mukasa, legendary fighter, General Rashid, one of the original signers of the Republic of New Africa, Mama Jeffries, Dolores Blake, who carries the baton of Queen Mother Moore, Maimuna, and Dr. Leonard Jeffries and others. These are the elders that I respect, that have moved me in my... So in closing, we're continuing this reparations conversation. You can meet us at the African American Museum, the Ancient African Museum on Water Street at 3:30 today, right before we induct Comrade Worrell into the Hall of Justice. And you can find out more how to get involved with the reparations movement in Cobra. And yes on socialism. 3:30 today. Of course.
Okay, yes, revolution, yes, socialism. And I think it all becomes by imagination, right? Like being in this room, I can imagine what it means to fight side by side with black, poor whites, and immigrants. And so I think, and Native Americans, and right, like everybody who's affected. And I think that means opening up our homes for the kitchen table conversations. Like, let's have tacos with each other, let's have tamales with each other, and let's see how pain is affecting our lives, but also help each other translate it. So that's, I think, like the key. And I think the second would be, as my own kind of job that is organizing in the South with 8 states, I'm open to be able to work and connect immigrant rights organizations with black organizations and others so that we can build power collectively and get to that revolution that we want to see.
Thank you. Totally.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, just following and honoring our elders, I want to say hello to Mr. Rashid, General Rashid. We worked together back in Florida, so I'm so glad to see him over here. So revolution, yes to the revolution, but before we got to the revolution, we need to take care of ourselves too, because we're not going to be lasting, right? We need to replicate the work that we are doing. That's why we organize. So, but at the same time, we need to also take care of ourselves. I'm just thinking about Ms. Fire Rose and how she must be feeling right now. And we need to really send all our good love and, goodbye to one of our leaders over here. So I'm just saying this because, our people are already tired of it defending themselves, reacting to what is coming afterwards. But if we don't take care of each other, we're not going to be lasting in this fight. Thank you.
Amen.
Revolution, and answer your question, revolution. But most of all, we have to look at our history and know that we're repeating a lot of our things. So I would just tell people we have to take a stand. And when we take this stand, it's going to make people uncomfortable. And that's the conversation. But don't let certain people in your house. I will leave you with that. We're going to let people in our house in Selma tomorrow. And we know what they're going to do when they take it back. So it's our job, everybody in this room, to go ahead and hit social media and call these people out. And we can't be afraid because they call us out.
All right, no, go ahead. All right, Marcia. Go on, Marcia.
So one of the things that I want to lift up that was mentioned in the first panel briefly is the census.
Yes.
This is about political power and economic power, and they're trying to stop the participation in the census. And one concrete way of doing that is, are they going to use the total population or only certain populations to determine what electoral districts look like after 2020? So please pay attention and engage in the census. And we also need to stop organizing around elections and organize about what we want our democracy to look like. And it's not about a particular date. It's constant organizing.
All right now.
Hello, everyone. Just want to thank Ms. Barber for this opportunity and Dr. Karen as well. It's been an honor to be amongst you all today. As my fellow panelists have been mentioning, organize, 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 and it is important for us to come up with some type of agenda to present to the candidates so that they meet our needs and hold them accountable throughout election once they are voted into the White House, Congress, etc. So that's my main point.
Thank you.
What about revolution?
All right.
The first thing I would say, this is Joe Drayton, President of the National Bar Association, is when we talk to politicians and when we talk to corporations, we need to ask them to stand with us on issues as fundamental and sacrosanct as the right to vote. That should be easy. Use us, the lawyers, to help you identify the implications of a vote. That's a nonpartisan issue. The federal judiciary is under attack now because of the vote, right? And that's an implication. So we should get out in front on that. We advocate, we advise, we counsel, but we gird you. That's our responsibility. So strategically partner with us. We have many strategic partnerships, but in this room, I know we can have more. When we have that, you will ignite your lawyers to stand with you, go into the areas where you go, where you think we don't travel, we'll be there with you.
Yes, to the revolution and all. We have our booklet, it's our toolkit to teach you how to go inside, organize, and get people to vote out of jails. If we concentrate on this year, we will make a great impact and effect on all these city elections that wasn't there, and then we'll catch it in the state and the federal. One thing I want you to remember real quick is the fact that 98% black women, say 98%. 98%. Black women, 93%, say 93. 8 to 10,000, say 8 to 10,000. 98% black women, 93% black men, 8 to 10,000 formerly and currently incarcerated people changed the 25 rule in Congress and got Doug Jones in office over Roy Moore. Okay? So this is something that we could do. Real quick to stay in my minute and stay in order, I got to add this. When you got Barber and Juan and you got Rose Sanders on the phone for a national gathering called the 54th Jubilee Anniversary, and you got Karen Jones on there along myself and Madrisa Russo over there that got to make an announcement, that had to argue and fight for us to do that backwards march and for us to do that later on tomorrow, we are in the right place at the right time with the right leaders. How people get that is by getting in touch with this young man here with the pretty hair. That young lady there in the pretty blue dress, or either get in touch with myself, the vice chairman of the Prodigal Child Project over there, raise your hand, and Jimmy Daughtry over there. Y'all could get it, y'all could call us, we could come to you, and we're gonna ask Tanya, where's Tanya at, to help fund us. Brother Albert is taking down your name. If you want to get signed, get on the sign-in sheet, and we'll come teach and train you. We do it for pastors and preachers, but we need you.
Excellent. Thank you. And everybody should know that Kenneth Glasgow is no joke. He brought the lawsuits that opened up the possibility for people to vote. Thank you, Kenneth Glasgow.
And to piggyback off of Mr. Glasgow, if you don't think that voting rights are under attack here in Alabama, I want to read you a direct quote from the Daily Beast from our Secretary of State, John Merrill. This is what he said, and I quote, when asked if he wanted to inform previously incarcerated people about the voting rights, this is what he said: I don't see any reason to contact them directly if we're already reaching the entire population. That's a direct quote.
Spent $3 million. $3 million to fight against giving information to people about how to restore their vote. $3 million to fight against giving information. Okay. Yes. Austin Turk.
Hi, everyone. If you missed the previous panel, I'm Austin Turk, and I helped organize a lot of millennials.
Speak loud.
Okay. Is this a little better? Okay. So to help organize a lot of millennials in the midterm election of Senator Doug Jones from a historically black college university in the state of Alabama. what I can say is to the man who asked the question about how do you deal with people who get tired, I often think of the quote that says, to be woke and black in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And if you're in a constant, yes, and if you're in a constant state of rage, there is no way you can get tired. When you see, children dying from playing with toy guns, when you see, like I mentioned earlier, women going into hospitals and not coming out with their children because of medical malpractice, when you see people who are being evicted from their homes, when you see people who cannot vote, when you see people who cannot get food to eat, you cannot allow yourself to be tired. So I think the way to combat all of that is to, one, educate not only us, but our millennials.
Yes.
When you really put an understanding into things like the crack and cocaine disparity, it really becomes real for people. So start educating at the most mass that we can and being real about the conversations that we're going to have. And so that's my best advice to making sure that we keep people active past this election. It goes further past 2020. The livelihood of minorities, the livelihood of poor people is too much at stake to be tired. So that's what I can say.
All right. And if I can just say one thing to everybody, Austin Turk is part of 200 young millennials who we have trained. My organization puts on Millennial Votes Matters trainings, where we do nothing but bring millennials together, and we spend intensive days training so that they can go out and be an Austin Turk and register hundreds of voters and get them to mobilize a turnout. So we're going to be doing that here in Alabama. We're planning one for this year with some help. And we're also looking at Mississippi and Louisiana. So we know where work needs to be done, but if you want to work on that with us, let us know. And come on, Keisha.
All right, well, first of all, I want to humbly apologize to my brother, Reverend Kenny Glasgow. No, I just got to say that for, the just phenomenal, groundbreaking work that you've been doing in Alabama and other formerly incarcerated people for years and years and years. So I just want to close with a quote from, our brother, we all know who it is, but he said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet depreciate agitation, are those who want what? The crops without plowing up the ground. They want the ocean without the awful war of its waters. They want the rain without the what? Without the thunder and lightning. Frederick Douglass said this struggle may be a personal one, or political one. Y'all help me. But it's got to be a struggle because he said power concedes nothing without a demand. He never did and it never will. Thanks.
All right now. So is the video ready?
Hey, this is a picture of myself and Martin Luther King.
Okay.
When he marched across the bridge, I was right there with him. It's time for us to keep fighting and organizing.
All right.
Because we're still in slavery, and this country still commits crimes against us. We need to organize like never before, and it's not just happening in Selma, but it's happening all over the world. In Libya, in Venezuela, the United States is bringing the nation. And thank you very much, Queen. Thank you very much. Black power to everybody, but remember we must get organized. I was down here 50 years ago with SNCC, S-N-C-C, the Student General Coordinating Committee.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brother.
Thank you. First of all, to our panelists, panel 1, panel 2, to all the great information you brought, to all the work you do every day, to all of you in this room, so many of you who are powerful, doing amazing work. You all could have been on this panel. You all have so much to bring. We want to thank you. Thank you. Is the video ready? And can everybody give the panel one more? We're going to play the video at Mother Fire Rose's request. Please, we're going to do that honor to her right now.
So let me just set this up, Reverend. I know several of you in the room. I just wanted to, in the honor of Fire Rose, and since we're in the Hank Sanders building, this little video that we shot during Doug Jones' Roy Moore, it shows all was shocked at what I saw. But this is a film that I did, and Russell, the cameraman back there. And basically, this is your smoking gun. Watch it happen. Oh, and it's a little bit cut off because we can't get it to be a red tape. Okay.
Let's roll the film. Well, this audience has been wonderful. We're way over. Let's roll the film.
And remember to do bad part of your public life. Don't give us next for our vote. We got to demand.
Where's the sound? Where's the sound? Sorry. I can't hear you. Listen, everybody.
Men don't need the right to vote. So, to me, it is a vote and die election.
We have a special election in our and to make sure that we get every vote out in spite of whatever obstacles there are.
And I'm hoping that I don't have any problems voting today. Like many of the people that I know in this area, they've been sent to 2-3 different places and still have not had a chance to vote.
I say right down the road. Well, I gotta go way across town to
I live a block from here. Why am I going to 5 different locations? It's almost like they don't want us to vote.
One of my coworkers had a problem with her ID this morning. They told her that she wasn't the person on the picture.
Voter suppression is a very serious problem, and it comes in all kinds of ways.
And she said, this is me on the picture, this is my name, and I came to vote.
When they require photo ID, the groups that it hurts the most are the poor, the old, the minority. It doesn't hurt the poor people because many of them don't have cars and therefore don't have the photo ID. Many people actually give up.
I think it's a way to discourage people from voting.
And that day it got a little worse today because they were trying to sabotage it.
Several years ago, I went to the poll to vote, and my name was not on the polling roll. I said, not only have I been a voter, but I'm a member of the Alabama State Senate.
You know, my grandmother, she painted the picture of it being like, the blood being like water running down the side of the bridge, and I would just tune in.
Whenever we went on March, they would say, get the nigger lovers first, then get the niggas. They beat us up.
To be in Selma, Alabama, the birthplace of the civil rights movement, we won a major victory. People lost their lives for this victory. Priority number 1 should be vote.
People gave their lives, black and white. Young and old gave their lives to support voting rights.
The Supreme Court struck down in the Voting Rights Act, Section 4B. That was a very powerful thing, but now that it's gone, you have voter suppression coming up in all kind of ways. And by the time you go into court and fight it, they got another scheme going on.
There's 2,000 vote, 3,000 vote difference all of a sudden. Look how it's narrowed.
Because Selma came in. Dallas County came in, which is Selma, and look at the market.
Selma came in.
Just seeing the difference that this area just made. Wow. What if we wouldn't have had to search for our polling locations?
In spite of the voter suppression, people have been coming out in great numbers.
But I didn't give up. I went. All right.
Doug Jones, 609. 609, Rob 175. The Doug Jones one. 9%. That's good.
We have people like in the past, like Martin Luther King, and we have marched, and we have gotten to the point that we can actually come and vote and have a voice in the world. We have people that actually died to have the right to vote.
I think that you have to always kind of moderate your excitement. We cannot even think that's over. This fight is just beginning.
All right.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.